Did you know that right here, right now where I'm standing, I might be over the top of an old cemetery? The portion of Osage River Valley that we now call the Lake of the Ozarks was settled over 100 years before the lake existed. And those pioneers, well, they buried their deceased in cemeteries or just on their plots of land on their farmlands. And those farms, that land tended to be in the valleys where the ground was more fertile. That land was covered by the lake in 1931. Now, before you get too freaked out, just know that Union Electric, the one who actually was the one who built the Bagnell Dam to create the Lake of the Ozarks, did everything that it could to remove any remains that were in graveyards or cemeteries prior to flooding this Osage River Valley. The official count from Union Electric was that there was roughly 60 cemeteries encompassing approximately 2,800 grave sites. However, according to Missouri State Archives, they were only able to recover roughly 1,121 of the remains in said grave sites. And that's for a couple of reasons. First off, because the grave diggers were relying on word of mouth to find the remains. So knowing the exact location of many of these grave sites was fairly challenging. Not to mention, many of the next of kin, they had already moved away, so they had no way of getting in touch with these people to find out exactly where some of these grave sites were. The second reason was that many of these tombs, these remains were buried either in wooden caskets or no casket at all. So think about it, 50 to 75 years underground. Well, you can imagine that probably nothing existed once the elements and underground varmints got a hold of it. In many of those cases, the story is that the gravediggers would actually just grab a shovel of dirt from the area that the remains were told to have been, since there was nothing there and it had been completely decomposed or eaten or whatever the case may be. They would just take a shovel of dirt and take that to wherever they were relocating these grave sites, really just to basically honor the area where these remains were supposed to be. Another interesting fact was that these workers or gravediggers who were responsible for digging up these remains, they had to be quarantined for roughly 2 years because there were fears that some of the graves might still be carrying diseases like smallpox that would put those people underground. Union Electric actually created 8 new cemeteries that were obviously on higher ground, which is where they moved these remains to. It is said that Union Electric did everything that they could to find every grave site that they knew of. If they could find it, they dug it up. Except in the case of a man from Morgan County. Evidently, this gentleman lived a rather unsavory life. And so when he passed away, rather than burying him in the cemetery, the people of the town decided that he should be buried outside of the cemetery. And I guess that was just a way of kind of showing because this person was unsavory and maybe showed a lack of respect for the people of the town, they decided they would return that lack of respect when they buried him. And so evidently they buried him just outside of the cemetery where they had buried slaves at that time. The story goes that when Union Electric came to this burial site, this cemetery, to obviously dig up these remains, members of this particular family, of this gentleman, this unsavory gentleman, for whatever reason, decided to stand guard over his gravesite or wherever he was evidently buried, and were holding shotguns and dared the gravediggers to dig this gentleman and I guess the slaves up. So that's some remains that might still remain. There actually is a survey that shows where all of these cemeteries or graveyards existed prior to the lake being flooded. In case you're curious, here's a bunch of them. Mile marker 0.1, so right by the dam. There's a couple of them on mile marker, right around mile marker 2 are in coves. Mile marker 3 and 4. Mile marker 8.5, 11, 12, 26, 2 right around 26.5, another right around 27, another roughly 4 cemeteries right around mile marker 31, right where Lynn Creek comes into the main channel, as well as mile marker 35.5, 3 right around mile marker 41, mile marker 42, and according to these records, there's at least 3 cemeteries on the Gravois Arm as well. That's pretty much where the list ends, but if you want to check it out for yourself, the complete records of the cemeteries are on display at the Camden County Historical Society Museum, which is in Lynn Creek. So just remember, the next time you're out on the Lake of the Ozarks, boating, kayaking, paddleboarding, swimming, riding on that tube, coving out, you might be right over top of a cemetery that existed some 100 plus years ago. Kind of creepy.